Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Brokers Playbook. Good afternoon, REC Insiders. I wanted to welcome a very special guest, a guest that many of you may have seen before. I am sitting here with none other than Mr. Hunter Milborne at the Milborne, head offices in Toronto on Madison. Milborne, we'll start this again. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Brokers Playbook. I wanted to make a huge introduction this afternoon to Mr. Hunter Milborne. Mr. Milborne, welcome to Brokers Playbook.
Thanks, Simeon.
It's a pleasure to have you. I'm going to give a quick introduction. I also want Mr. Milborne to do an introduction for himself. Hunter has been in the scene for well over 30 years in the real estate pre-construction specifically scene in Toronto. He literally is one of the founding fathers of the business. And what I mean by that is Toronto used to be a very different market going back 30 years. And it's an extremely different market now with a mass amount of opportunity, with tremendous amount of sales volume. And as I kind of mentioned, Hunter has been at the forefront of that scene, of the new construction scene, for a long time. Hunter, tell me a little bit about how you got started in this business, because then we're going to evolve into how other people can kind of take the torch from you and build their own practices surrounding this amazing market of new construction.
Well, at the beginning of my career, I was fortunate that I ended up working for a developer. So I actually began my career selling condominiums. I never really had a traditional real estate resale career. And in those days, it was really in the infancy of the business.
So you were a marketer. You were hired to market a project.
No, I was a sales guy on the floor.
Sales guy on the floor. Okay.
Yeah. So what happened was that within a year, I got approached by, I was in my mid-20s at the time, and I got approached by two guys that were in their 50s and said that we'd like to start a company that would focus on and specialize in marketing condominiums. At that point, there weren't a lot of condominiums that had been marketed. So we didn't have a pre-construction or no pre-construction. The very first project that we were able to secure was 33 Harbor Square. And for those who could check in the archives of, Google, I mean, it was a lot of the headlines were mistake on the lake. It didn't really go too well. They built this building as a rental. At that time, it's hard to believe, but at that time, there was not really anything else on the waterfront except that building.
Isn't that interesting? So like the press picked it up, and so condominium itself as an asset class wasn't established yet.
No. I think that probably happened, in the early 2000s. I mean, I think one of the biggest benefits to the condominium industry was the Greenbelt legislation when it came in 2005, because what that did was it froze about 1,600,000 acres on a big golden horseshoe around the Toronto.
100%.
And shortly thereafter, CIBC came out with a study and said that, the most expensive real estate in the world were the islands: Singapore, Hong Kong, Manhattan.
Limited supply.
And so
naturally,
and basically what had happened, the effect of this Greenbelt was that basically between the lake and the Greenbelt, it made Toronto like an island. So the single family homes between 2005, when that came in, started to really shoot up because their supply was significantly constricted.
That's so interesting, because they call that the Manhattanization
right.
of Toronto. Since that day, the Greenbelt phenomenon that you mentioned is the day that really the condo market found its feet and started building roots.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about your experience in the evolution of the skyline.
Well, the one thing that's been pretty consistent for the last 20, 25, 30 years is the total number of new homes that have been sold in the GTA area. And it's been, between 40 and 45,000. So 30, 35 years ago, there was maybe 1,000, 2,000 condominiums, and the rest was single family and townhomes.
Right.
By the time we got to 2005, it was about 2/3 single family and townhome low rise and about 1/3 condos. So by 2015, 10 years later after Greenbelt, it had done a complete flip. It was 2/3 condominium and 1/3 low rise single families and towns. So what happens, what that has meant for the condominium pre-construction industry is that over the last 5 or 6 years, since 2015, in a slow year, like 2018, you have maybe 20,000 sales. In a busy year, like 2017, or probably this year, we had around 36,000 sales. So the difference made up that 40 to 45,000. And to add to that, CMHC, our government housing supervisor, more or less, has said that in order for the GTA to become a balanced market, without outrageous appreciation, you need a balance of supply and demand so that the city and area needs between 50 and 55,000 new homes per year to stay in a relatively balanced market.
To create a balance. And we're falling short of that by tens of thousands on a good year.
If the total is 45,000, it's 5 to 10 short. And if it's 40,000, it's, a lot short.
I think with that being said, and this was right before COVID hit last year. So we're sitting in spring of 2021 now. And I remember end of 2019, RBC put out a report. And this was, and RBC just put out another report now, and maybe we'll get to that. And that's where potentially government intervention can come in. That's more on the market side. But at the end of 2019, RBC reported exactly what you just said. The market needs 50 to 60,000 doors a year. Yeah. So this is before COVID. Imagine the whole world is pumping like we know no different. Forget the events of the last year for a second. And we were delivering 30,000 on a best year. On a great year, 30,000 doors. Call it
condominiums?
Condominiums, housing, period. Yeah. So call it 30 or 35,000. Regardless, we're 15 to 25,000 doors short per year. And that's been snowballing, which creates this extraordinary market in GTA of going up 5, 10, 12, 13% per annum appreciation. Because people say, how long can this go on for? Well, it's going to go on forever unless somebody does something about it. And the only person who can do something about it is the development committees. It's the planning committees in the city who can stop the red tape, stop the 10-year process, the most embarrassing thing of all time. A project cannot take 5 to 10 years to develop. So as long as those issues, those blocks are in place, nothing's going to change.
Yeah, if the demand isn't going to lessen. I mean, if someone said to me the other day, the global pandemic had a catastrophe on many industries, the hospitality business, the restaurant business. But if a global pandemic cannot derail the GTA real estate market, which it really didn't.
And it can't.
Volume was off a little bit, but prices kept moving up. So the demand equation, I don't think, is going to change. So the only thing that's going to help is the supply equation, as you mentioned, is to approve more projects.
So that's number one. Number two, now we can talk, I don't want to ignore the pandemic, and that's not where I was going with it a second ago. Now, where I want to go with it is once Pearson reopens, once the University of Toronto, Ryerson University, and every other major post-secondary education institution reopen, call it 6 months, call it a year from today. For worst case, call it 2 years from today. It doesn't matter when, but it will reopen. Life will resume at some point. The government of Canada relies heavily on specific qualified immigration in the tune of 300,000 to 400,000 people per year that they're going to pursue aggressively. If during the pandemic, we saw the local demand soar the way that it has, we saw the global supply chain slow down projects. Is that delta not going to create even more of a crisis, even more appreciation potentially?
100%. And also, students are going to come back. Immigration, the federal government has said, look, we've had this bit of hiatus in immigration, but in the following 3 years, they're expecting, we had 240 to 260,000 people a year. 1 year was 280,000. So, sure. Over 3 years, that's 750. So they're talking about 1,200,000 to be approved.
And how many of those people end up in the GTA, would you say?
Well, they don't know exactly, but it's the majority. So that's, and they don't all buy at the beginning, but they put pressure on the system. Yeah.
Eventually. Okay. So with that being said, I think it's very clear to me that unless something very major were to change in the way our city and our province does business, I don't think they're going to be able to unlock the quagmire that is the supply issue, because that is the fundamental issue. With that being said, as brokers, because here we're speaking to brokers playbook, and by the end of this conversation, I'm hoping to have some practical tips and techniques that people can employ in their practice and their business today to be able to create 5, 10, 15 more deals a year, which equates to 50, 100, 150,000 more per year in income, while being the best representative to their client and helping them grow wealth and meet their housing needs. So with that being said, from your perspective, you run one of the biggest practices in the country, maybe one of the biggest practices in North America for new construction. You have 30 years in the business. What is your advice to a new agent or to an established agent that is in resale, that has not been that has not started that new business vertical, that has not meddled with it, that doesn't understand the 200-page APS? Because I've heard all these different excuses as to why people have not tapped into this incredible resource of inventory.
Yeah.
In a market that has no inventory, you have the opportunity to sell a building that has 300 units in it. What is your advice to that agent on getting started?
Well, listen, I think whether that agent's been in business 2 years or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, if you think of how your practice as a professional real estate agent goes, it's pretty much reactive. It's needs driven. Somebody who you've dealt with before is probably going to call you. Maybe at the beginning of your career, you were doing some cold calling or some referral, but now you have a client base. So you're kept pretty busy with that client base. They want something bigger. They want something smaller. They want something for a friend. They're going to refer. They want something for their kids. They want a recreational property. And they want something. And then, they trust you as their agent and they want to deal with you, right? But I think that there's two things that have to be done. Number one is you have to be proactive with those existing clients.
What do you mean by proactive?
Well, in other words, when was the last time you called your client and said to them, look, you're in your home, your kids, everybody's fine. Like, you haven't called me lately, right? I mean, you don't need anything. But what are you doing with your investment dollars? You're probably talking to somebody at the bank who knows less about business and life than you do, trying to sell you mutual funds, right? So, and you can give them this little presentation on the phone because they know you and they trust you. And, if you say to them, look, you tell me what you think the Toronto real estate market is going to go up on a compounded annual basis for the next 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah.
4 years. If they say 8, 10, 12 to 13%, they're probably going to be right. But even if they pick a much lower number,
like 5,
say they pick 4 or 5%. If you explain how a pre-construction condo sale works, and that you're basically purchasing an asset for $500,000 or $600,000 or $700,000, but you're not paying fully for that asset until 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. You're paying a 15 or 20% deposit in stages. So if that appreciation rate, let's pick a number, it's 600,000 and it's 4 years. Without compounding, it's $24,000 that it's gone up, right? So if you're putting down a 20% deposit, that's 24 times 4 is basically 100,000.
Sure.
So if you're putting a 20% deposit up, and sometimes it's 15, you're paying $120,000 deposit. So you're basically almost doubling that money. Now show me the mutual funds, there's no guarantee in life.
So you're using a very conservative number.
Yeah.
And I want to take this a step back because you may have said this maybe too many times. Maybe you said it too fast, but I want to break that down.
Yeah.
I want to break that down because today I've been doing this with you along your side for over a decade at this point. So I also want to choose my words carefully, and I want to make sure that somebody who has not heard this talk before really catches the essence of the opportunity. You're a resale agent. Your name is Joseph. You called Joseph. You sold him this house 2-3 years ago. Joseph, by being proactive, I'm going to give Joseph a quick call. I'm going to say, how are things going along? How have you been doing? Not sure if you've noticed, but I'm going to remind you that the home that we bought for $700,000 3 years ago is worth well over $1 million today. Joseph, while your house did this, so did everybody else's house. And so did the opportunity to develop more real estate in key neighborhoods. Let's say Joseph lives in Richmond Hill, a prime example of development and opportunity. Richmond Hill is the mecca for new townhome divisions, is the mecca for beautiful, like along the Yonge Street corridor, beautiful towers are populating the streets. Why? Because people want to live there. So right beside the home that you sold for $700,000 that's now worth 1.2, they're putting a tower where that's going to be worth living in. People will want to live there because they have access to all the beautiful amenities that a city like Richmond Hill affords. So to tell the story to somebody who's winning, your client who bought it 700 and their house is worth $1 million, or it doesn't matter what it's worth, but it went up significantly. To explain to them how real estate goes up is not a far stretch. The proof is sitting inside their home.
Right.
So to explain this, I think to their client, I think they can make a very compelling case.
You're preaching to the converted in a way, right?
Because you can prove to them that they have won.
Right.
I was going to give you a quick call. I want to drop off a CMA to let you know what your home is worth at this point. Because maybe Joseph, Mr. Client, you might want to refinance some of that equity to make some investments. Maybe you're sitting on capital, and maybe you should be really looking at how to position your money in order for that money to grow the same way your home has.
Or if there had been an opportunity to buy, let's say you didn't need that home to move into, but let's say there'd been an opportunity to buy that home, whether it was a single family or a condominium, and not close on it for 4 years. Because when you're talking about that dramatic appreciation, once you've already closed, that appreciation rate is on the asset value.
That's right.
And
From day one.
Yeah.
From the day they signed the APS.
Right. But if you're owning it already, your asset value is your cash in. So it's appreciating and it's fantastic. But,
with no mortgage payments.
Right. But the thing is that, well, I was talking about if you were doing it on your existing property.
Oh, got it.
So in other words, if you bought it for 700 and you wait 4 years and now it's worth $1.3 million, your return is based on the 700.
That's right.
But if you were able to buy it with $100,000 to $140,000 deposit, and you didn't close for 4 years, then your return is off the charts.
That's right.
Because you've had the same appreciation.
No closing costs yet. A myriad
and
of
that
expenses.
opportunity doesn't exist with single family or townhomes because your delivery dates are 9 months, 12 months, 15 months. When you get into these medium to large size condominium projects, your minimum closing is probably 2 or 3 years, and it can be 4 or 5, can be longer.
That's a tremendous point. To break that further down, when you're buying into a low-rise development or a townhome, what Hunter is mentioning is from the time that you buy to the time that you close is going to be far shorter than a high-rise tower. The high-rise tower actually delivers the opportunity to have a growing time, an appreciation time of 3, 4, or 5 years, depending on the project, while you don't have to close on a mortgage yet. You don't have to carry it. You don't have to endure the closing costs, the land transfer taxes, anything, while your asset is gaining every single day that goes by. And I think that's huge. Hunter, what would you say makes a great project? So let's say we got through this component. How does an agent pick a great project? What are the key characteristics of a great project? Aside, of course, of location.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sponsorship, who's doing it, is it a Pemberton? Is it a Lifetime? Is it a company that people know, that, that's well capitalized and that has a good track record? But the transit score and the walk score are very important. So
huge.
Probably 40 to 50% of the new development over the last 5 or 10 years has been within 500 meters of a transit stop. So that's one thing that developers look for in a location, and that's one thing purchasers look for. So I think obviously you can't ignore location, but the walk score, the transit score, and the sponsorship. But we're lucky in Toronto and Canada. I mean, most developers are very capable. So the design of the buildings is pretty much good for all of them. The amenities are prescribed.
And it's getting better. We're starting to see star architects coming in, world famous designers sponsoring the design of a building and influencing what the end product will be like.
Yeah, so I think for an established real estate agent, again, whether you've been in the business 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, if you're a bit proactive with your client base and just plant the seed of that investment idea, that and you have to sincerely believe it, but we believe it because we've been
Of
doing it
course.
for a long time. But that you can, on a safe basis, compound your equity quite dramatically by buying something pre-construction, which allows you to put that 15 or 20% deposit down in stages over
In
a year to a
stages.
year and a half, and then close on it 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
Hunter, thank you for that. One of the biggest questions I get from resale, specifically agents that are not in the space, their first concern is, why would I want my client to buy pre-construction at a higher price when I can sell them resale for $100, $200, $300 per square foot less in the same corridor? And this is the only people who ask that question are literally agents. It's not so much the client, because I speak to clients every day, but it's the agent that's struggling to understand the logic of the construction cost of what goes into the purchase price. Can you, from your experience, touch as to why that delta is there, where it does get created from, and what would your advice be to the resale agent on how to explain that and literally understand it in order to successfully pass the message along to the client?
Well, listen, one of the primary rules of sales, if it's not really an objection or question, then you're not going to bring it up, right? So if it doesn't come up, then you don't need to worry about it.
Of course.
But whenever anybody asks me, I always use the car analogy. I mean, what would you rather have, a new car, a brand new car, or a used car? Because a brand new car, it's got a warranty, it's got that newness to it, and a lot of a lot of people prefer to buy something brand new and not something that's used, right? So whether it's a used home or a used condominium, I wouldn't say it's like a used car, but a car depreciates in value, but it's really the condition, right? So
The capital improvements are the exact same. Of course, the building's not going to go anywhere.
Fortunately, in real estate, I mean, even an existing home can appreciate and will appreciate, but it probably won't appreciate at the same rate as the new home.
From off the bat, would you say that construction costs, development charges doubling, quadrupling in the last 5 years have a lot to do with that? And does the market need to catch up to it? Where do you position pricing, for example? Let me give you an example. So downtown Toronto, let's call it the Junction. We have a tremendous opportunity coming up, launching with our friends at Marlin Spring and Craybrook, called House of Assembly.
Yeah.
It's literally coming up in the next few weeks. Price point there is going to be around, let's call it between $1,250 and $1,350, for examples. A resale condominium in the area right now is trading for about $1,100, $1,050 to $1,150 a square foot. So that extra $100, $200, some people would say easily, oh no, they're just counting on the market appreciating, they're taking that into account. Or is it maybe that we're missing information that the cost of construction over the next 3 years is going to get significantly higher? We have to account, so the builder, in order to actually deliver the product, has to account for those contingencies. Would you say there's truth to that?
Yeah, I think, listen, I think that if any developer could sell for less, they would. There's a economics there. You've got land costs, hard costs, which is the building itself, soft costs, which is all the things that relate to the building, like interest, landscaping that don't go into the building itself, and a profit requirement. So in order to get construction financing, the construction lender, the bank, is going to look and say, well, okay, here's your land cost, hard cost, soft cost, your total, here's a normal profit requirement. That means you have to sell for this. If you don't sell for this, we don't think the project is viable and we're not going to finance it.
It's true.
So it's not a question of what they want. It's really a question of what they have to do. And because construction costs have increased, because there's so much demand on the system, not just for the real estate, but for the trades and for the supplies. Lumber prices have gone up, steel prices
significantly.
Have gone up. So, and those trends can go up and down a little bit, but, I think that in a market like Toronto, where you've got a huge demand for that end product, it's going to translate its way through the system.
I agree. So I think to kind of wrap our thoughts and kind of reconstruct what we've discussed so far, it is to both our opinion that any resale agent, and I'm going to get into an example of this last 10 days with a collaboration, excuse me, that I worked with $1 million resale agent. But to bring this all back in, we're sitting with the CEO of Milborne Group, Hunter Milborne. Hunter has been in the business for 30 years. He has seen literally tens of thousands of units go through his hands. His sales team is responsible for half of Toronto's skyline from the new construction in the last 20 years. I think that's a very fair statement.
Maybe not quite half. But yeah.
Maybe not
Yeah.
quite half. And all stuff aside, we've seen the city grow since I started my career exactly 16 years ago. I have personally contributed. Like, there's pretty much a street that I can drive down that I don't see projects that I've sold. Mm-hmm. So that creates a certain energy within my book of business and within my team, the REC, that myself and Jazz run. So the investment here, guys, the opportunity here is the investment inside your own business to build a vertical where you can add easily deals. If you want to build a business in new construction, it is very easy to do so. And I say easy with every sense of the word, because all it takes is hard work, time, and effort. So just like the business you've built, it's not difficult. It's hard work and strategic marketing to capture the audience that you want. Yeah, and there's an audience for this.
I mean, you don't need to find new clients because you already have a lot of clients that know you and like you and trust you, right? Eventually, you'll get new clients once you get a bit of a reputation for,
being able to source products
in this field. Yeah.
So I think this message should really resonate with established brokers who are they're this close to being able to have 10, 20 deals a year. Literally, all they have to do is launch a marketing campaign inside their own database, saying that I, Simeon Papa Elias, have access to a few really great projects this year in preparation. So you plant the seed. Close to the date, you do a round of calls. Speak to your clients, touch them, feel them. You're making money. Real estate is off the charts. There's going to be some opportunities coming right up. Are you interested? Shortlist 10, 20, 30, 50 people out of your database. Once the project comes, make sure that you give them a folder or paper. For those who are still using paper, print off a few of the brochures. But most of us are now 100% digital. Get them comprehensive data on the project, the brochure, the location, the financial analysis of how that neighborhood or micro market is performing. Where do we see it going? I think earlier we covered the macro of our GTA economics, and it's going to be through the roof. But each market, micro market inside Toronto is different. And I think there's a very big void in you to fill, to educate the client why the Queensway or the Junction is better than investing in Bay and Bloor right now, or whatever the case may be in any specific market. Why investing in Bowmanville is a great idea, because the GO train and everything else that's happening and the price per square foot and the opportunity are not balanced. Mm-hmm. So when you can create those opportunities for your clients is when you get loud to your client database. So I really think that brings together an understanding of the next steps. I want to now give an example. I want you to tell me 2 words about James House in Ottawa, because we're in Toronto. I'm a practicing broker here in Toronto, but you had a project in Ottawa. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, the James House project in Ottawa, it's in a neighborhood called the Glebe, which is a very popular neighborhood. And it's a medium-sized building. It's a 127-unit building. It's by Urban Capital, which is a very experienced development group based in Toronto. They've done other projects in Ottawa before. So the stars have kind of lined up for us on that one. It's a beautiful design, and it went on the market very recently. So it's still in very much in play. And I think that, people look and say, well, gee, Ottawa is the capital of the country. It's over 1 million people. It's getting its transit system. So, in one sense, it's a little bit behind Toronto in its development, but also the prices are much lower.
So where I want to go with this is here. So I'm very fortunate to spend time with you to talk about projects. And what happened is on our Brokers Playbook Clubhouse chats, which is on every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. There was a few of my friends in Ottawa. A couple of years ago, I was in Portugal and with the Chairman's Club, which is kind of that top tier of agents across the Royal LePage network. And I made a lot of very, very amazing friends on that trip. And it is a tremendous mind share.
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to use the example of Ms. Rachel Hammer of Hammer and Associates. She's based out of Ottawa. $1 million plus production, 4 gals. Very serious player in the game. She doesn't play games. Her clients love her by referral only. Tremendous resale work model. And she said, how did you guys get, she was asking me, we finished #1 in the country that year. How did you guys get to this level of transactions? How is it possible that you can do that many transactions? Forget the value of it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's scaled. We're doing it at scale because we use, for half our number, pre-construction, where we don't have to leave the office. If I were to sell this building that we stand in today, I'd have to be here, line up photography, do all the things that we need to do as brokers to succeed, to market the property. With pre-construction, nothing exists yet.
Well, I always say to agents, I mean, getting a pre-construction sale is really basically getting paid a full selling commission plus for what really amounts to as a referral.
100%.
Typically, what's a normal selling commission? 2.5, 3? So
2 to 2.5.
2 to 2.5. Okay, so it betrays my naivety in resale business.
2 to 2.5 at this point.
Yeah, so most developers have gotten used to paying a minimum of 3, but more often than not 4. And once you have that relationship with whoever's listing the project, then it's not difficult to get access. And basically, you introduce the client, and then basically it's a lot simpler than selling an existing product, I think.
Once you develop your script.
Yeah.
So I think once you develop your script, and this is where I like to say it's easy, because for any resale agent doing $1 million plus, you know how to speak to a client, you know how to close a client, you know that you're not there to sell anything, you're there to fulfill their needs, to meet their goals. The true salesman isn't selling anything at all. Is filling the void for the client.
Well, it's a counselor relationship.
100%.
It's guiding them, answering their questions, asking them questions, helping them decide.
100%. With that being said, Rachel is in the Ottawa market. She's one of the top stars in the Ottawa market. And when you called me to let me know about Urban Capital and what they're doing in Ottawa, I thought it was prudent to give her a call. And I said, Rachel, there's an opportunity coming up. Remember our conversation in Portugal? There's an opportunity coming up with where a good friend of mine is taking the listing. This is somebody I work with year in, year out. We do hundreds of deals together. Are you interested in checking this out? Because I think you can do a dozen deals in your sleep. And she goes, of course, wary, like, where do I start? Like, yes, I do want to do it, she says, but where do I start? So she got on the phone with my director of team operations, who also runs the REC Collaborations. The REC Collaborations is a program specifically for this, but above and beyond the REC collaboration, which I can speak to at any time, is we got her a folder of our processes. So how do we do it? So we have email templates, dozens of them, sequences. So if you have an organized CRM, which any organized successful agent would, it's easy to plug and play the pieces. So day 1 is dropping the seed. Day 5 is a phone call by the agent, God forbid. Yes, you do have to pick up your phone. Day 7 is a text, automatic. Most CRMs now have integrated all these pieces of technology. Day 9, your day 12, your day 14. Then there's a webinar or a live event if and when they come back, where your clients come on in and you take the project from A to Z with the opportunity for them to buy. With the opportunity for your client to buy today. Rachel thought she was going to do 5. She didn't want to commit to 12. Rachel Hammer today. Her clients are signing deals literally today or tomorrow. She's working with one of your vice presidents, Derek, in Ottawa. And she's going to do 12 deals. So much so that she involved a few other agents in her office to bring those deals together. She did 5. Her other friend did 4. The other person did 3, what have you. They're sitting at a dozen units. 12 transactions were created as a result of a conversation. And those agents, it's March, it's Q1, it's end of Q1. We're what, April 5th today? Those agents are 5 deals ahead. Not a single showing made. Not a single multimedia production was made. Nobody left the office. I think that's where the opportunity lies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a market like this, where clients are consistently, in my opinion, looking for opportunity, I think it's a great way to service that.
Well, I think also the mantra out there right now, I hear it from you, is there's no inventory, right? In a strong market, I mean, a house puts on the market, it's, multiple, it's gone fast. So it's hard to get inventory.
It is.
Whereas one piece of guaranteed inventory is new construction too.
It is. Hunter, I want to thank you so much for your time. Broker's Playbook. I truly believe that there was a lot of value in today's conversation, and there's a lot of things for you to consider and implement into your practice. If you are thinking of getting into this field, you are always welcome to go to our site, book a consultation with myself directly or my director of team operations, Bobby, to show you what we have on the go that can immediately fulfill the need and make building your vertical 10 times easier via REC collaborations. If you're looking to do this on your own, give us a call regardless. We'll give you exactly the points that you need to hit. And by all means, build it out yourself. It's not difficult. It's just work. If you're not scared of work, you're always going to succeed. Hunter, once again, thank you so much for all your advice. We hope to see you soon. See you back on Broker's Playbook.